Welcome back everyone to another episode of This Week in Comics. My name is Yule. Let's talk about some comics. Our bestsellers at Fantastic Comics last week were, counting down from number 5, we have Wonder Woman number 50, the culmination of a very long storyline that James Robinson has been writing. Sitting in at number 4, a surprise this week, retailers were gifted Die, Die, Die number 1 from Robert Kirkman and Chris Burnham, based on the numbers of Oblivion's song number 1 ordered. We had a bunch, but this was selling fast. Coming in at number 3, we have Superman number 1. This is the debut issue from Brian Michael Bendis and Ivan Reis. Stay tuned for the review. The runner-up spot this week was Amazing Spider-Man number 1, the debut issue from Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley. Taking the top spot this week, a familiar title in Monstress number 18. It is always a top seller. Alright everybody, this is the part where I review comics. I gotta let you know right now, there's some stinkers in this pile. First up this week we have Superman number 1. This is the first issue from Brian Michael Bendis and Ivan Reis. Bendis recently had a 6-part Man of Steel series that I thought was pretty good, at least until the last issue. In that series we find out what happens to his wife Lois Lane and his son Jonathan. And basically they go off on a vacation with his father, Jor-El, who's alive if you didn't know. So now we have Superman hanging out in his world without his wife and without his kid, and basically this whole issue is him moping around. He will, he'll go to his son's room and he'll remember a moment when he was talking to him. Or he'll be in his office and he'll remember Lois coming in and having said something. The other part of this story is obviously his Superman side. The Justice League meet up with him, and John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, has an interesting proposal. He basically wants Supes to be this leader of the Earth, as he is the pinnacle of humanity, maybe. And like, he's seen it all, Superman has. He's seen the best and the worst, and he knows our place in not only globally, but galactically. And if there's going to be a renaissance of sorts, then Superman should be the one leading the way. He doesn't seem like he really wants to do that. It kind of plays into some stuff in the Action Comics that Dan Jurgens wrote with Jor-El, because Jor-El's often been, he's told Kal that he should be our leader as Earthlings, that, you know, that's what Kryptonians are here for. And Superman has always been, no, I'm an Earthling, I'm a human, I'm one of them. And now John Jones, Martian Manhunter again, is suggesting that he does that. It doesn't really ring true for me with the Martian Manhunter character. In fact, I think I said it already, the Justice League didn't seem like Bendis was, he often will write stories and put the characters that he's writing, he'll use their voices whether it's not their real voices. And that's how I felt about this Superman issue. I know this is long and rambling, but I'm not really into it. Next up this week we have Amazing Spider-Man number 1 by Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley. Ryan Ottley drew a lot of Invincible, and Nick Spencer's been around for a while. He's done Captain America, Morning Glories, and all sorts of stuff. But first, let's talk about Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a guy who always has bad luck. Things go bad for him, even when he's Spider-Man, this really cool superhero. He's had loves of his life leave him or die. He's had friends die. He's had his uncle die. Just a lot of death in his life, a lot of hardships. He's always broke. He never has a winning day, really. I mean, this is the ultimate guy superhero who has a cloud over. He's Charlie Brown is what he is. He's Charlie Brown of the Marvel Universe, except the one time he wasn't was when he married Mary Jane. His longtime girlfriend. This was great. A lot of people were happy about that. And then one more day occurred, and then they weren't married anymore. And it was magically a thing that happened with Mephisto. You don't need to know about that, other than the fact that people were very upset about this. Peter Parker finally had his longtime girlfriend. He finally had some happiness, and now they ripped it away from him. And almost for like the last 10 years, there have been a lot of Spider-Man fans that have not been reading this book. And a lot of that is, placed on Dan Slott, even though he was just one of those guys that was around afterwards. So, Mary Jane is one of the reasons why you might want to read this book. It seems like they're going to get them back together again. So everybody's really super happy, except for me. Not because of that, because I wasn't really a fan of this issue. I didn't like the writing. The artwork was kind of boring. I feel Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of the... It's Marvel's biggest character, without a doubt. Bigger than Thor, bigger than Iron Man, bigger than Captain America, it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man. And if you don't have an artist on this book that reflects that, it just doesn't really do it for me. And that isn't really the problem with this book. It's just kind of boring. It doesn't really do it for me. What really upsets me is the writing. But it's really the story I don't like. I don't like how Nick Spencer is making Peter Parker a doofus again. He's got a whole bunch of roommates. One of them's a villain of his, even though he knows he's a villain. There is interior monologue in caption boxes. We all know I hate that stuff. And basically the characters are reacting to Peter in very serious situations that I don't think they would. Aunt May really turns her back on him. Mary Jane laughs in his face, and this is all before they start getting back together again. And Mysterio, one of his main villains, is really played, it's a 2-page fight scene. You gotta keep your villains strong, or else you better be making some new villains, and I don't see that happening, other than the fact that he has a roommate. Why does he hang up Mysterio to get picked up by the cops? Why doesn't he invite him into his room? Maybe he can take the top bunk or something like that. It's just stuff like that that really upsets me, and there is no real story. And if we're all just hanging our hats on the fact that Mary Jane and Peter Parker are getting together again, don't do it for me. Next up, we have Farmhand #1, which is a story about a man named Zeke who brings his family back home to the farm he used to live on. This farm, though, does not grow food. It grows human body parts for transplanting purposes. I enjoyed the family dynamic. The son is coming back home. He's kind of not successful in his professional life, so he has to come back, but his father, who runs the farm, is happy. His sister, who lives on the farm, is happy about this. But there is some dark secrets that are going on that we know have played a role in the past. There is also some espionage that goes in this book. There is a character that is trying to gain secrets of the farm. It's handled in quite an interesting way, and it plays a part later on towards the end of the story that makes me definitely want to read the second issue. I highly recommend this book, especially if you're into dark stories, and really cool characterization with the family members. I like that a lot. The art is cartoony, but not overly. The expressions on the characters' faces are excellent. The pacing of the art to the story is well done, and I really liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to the second issue. I highly recommend you pick this one up if you haven't already. Check this one out. Last up this week we have She Could Fly. This is a Dark Horse comic by Christopher Cantwell with art by Martin Morazzo. It is also one of the Berger books. Karen Berger is very well known for being an editor in comic books. She brought Neil Gaiman and a whole host of other UK artists and writers over to American comics. She formed Vertigo and had a very successful career, and she is trying to ply her trade over for Dark Horse now. And she has her own imprint, and this book is one you should definitely be checking out. The story is about Luna, a high school student who has psychotic imagery of violent actions that she's taking. And she has a really hard time coping with it. In the very beginning, we see her talking to a school shrink, and we just know that she's losing it. And there is also an event that's going on during this time where there is this woman who is flying through the air. It seems like it's across America, And Luna is basically pinning all of her hopes, maybe all of her sanity on this person that we're seeing. We don't know who it is. We don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And then she explodes, the person in the air, the person flying. And Luna is devastated. It seems that she's devastated, and that whole psychotic imagery starts up yet again. It's very confusing. We don't always know what is real and what isn't. And the fallout from the person in the air exploding is what this book is all about. I really enjoyed it. I like getting into the head of the character, Luna. There is that aspect of dialogue boxes, but I think it works pretty well in this instance. I really like She Could Fly. The artwork was good. I don't think it was spectacular, but it did what it had to do, and especially when dealing with things that aren't fully real, I thought it worked really well. So this is definitely a book I'm looking forward to. I think you should pick it up. Fans of Vertigo books from the past, or just things that are different than all the other comics that are going on today, this is definitely one you should be picking up. Let's check out some books I'm looking forward to, and not all of them are number ones. First up this week we have Life of Captain Marvel #1, written by Margaret Stoll, with art by my favorite superhero artist, Carlos Pacheco. This is going to be a 5-issue miniseries, and it looks like it's going to examine her history. Captain Marvel is a big deal in the Marvel universe as far as the movies are concerned, and she's a big deal here in the comic book universe. So, if you're a fan of Captain Marvel, you like Carlos Pacheco like I do, or you just want to read somebody that's big in the movie universe, check this one out. Next up we have Futurama Annual #1. If you have been collecting this book in the past, you'll know it's been a while since there's been an issue, but rejoice, we've got a double-sized annual. I personally like Futurama over all other animated cartoons that make it into comic book form. Rick and Morty is a close second, but Futurama always speaks to me. It's like I can hear the voices just better in that comic than I can any of the others. So, if you're a fan of Futurama like I am, or you just want to read a good comic from a cartoon series, I guess one that you like, this is one you should pick up. Green Lanterns #51 is my next book. It has a brand new team working on it, and Dan Jurgens is the writer. He's done Death of Superman and a million other superhero books, and Mike Perkins is the artist. I really like his stuff. He does some really good things. And although I like Green Lanterns as a title, I haven't been reading it lately. I mean, there's just so much to read these days. But I'm a big fan of Simon Baz, and I'm really a big fan of Jessica Cruz, and I'm looking forward to reading this. Since there's a new team on it, it'll be like a new #1, so I recommend checking this out if you want a fresh start with these cool characters and a good team working on it. Next up we have Weatherman #2. This is written by Jody Lehoop with art by Nathan Fox. I really like Nathan Fox's art. He does a kind of swoopy thing within his panels and page layouts, and it works really well. At the end of issue #1, we found out that our main character is accused for like basically 18 billion deaths or something like that, and we don't know why. And yeah, I'm interested in seeing what happened. There was an element of the first issue I wasn't really a fan of. If you've read it, you know what that is. It was just a little harsh, especially with my situation in life these days. But other than that, the first issue was very good, and I'm really looking forward to the second issue. So pick up a Weatherman #2. It sold out fast. I'm expecting this one too. Last but not least, we have the Overstreet comic book price guide. Comes out once a year, comes out on the week of San Diego Comic Convention. If you want to know what all your comics are worth, you have to have this guide. I mean, you can go online and see what people sold it for on eBay, but if you want a good idea of what the entire collection, what your entire collection, or just what other books are worth or what's trending up, there's lots of articles in this thing. There's a guide on how to price your comics. So there's a lot of information that you may not know about if you haven't read this book cover to cover. I recommend you do so. It comes out once a year, and if you have any interest in your collection and it being, what it's worth future-wise, you have to have this book. We use it every day, so pick this one up and you can be informed too. Thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode. Have a great day reading comics, and we'll see you next week.